Tēnā koutou katoa, and hello everybody. Welcome to the Lentil Intervention Podcast. My name is Ben Adelberg and I'm coming to you from Tamaki Makaurau, Auckland. Tēnei ka mihi ki te mana whenua o Aotearoa, and we acknowledge the local tribal authorities of New Zealand.
And g'day, I'm Emma Strutt and I'm currently coming to you from Darumbal country in Queensland. Before we dive into our conversation today, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. And finally, if you enjoy this potty, please subscribe, like, share or comment on our social media and consider buying us a coffee if you'd like to help support our work. Now on with the show.
At the Lentil Intervention, we go way back with Dr. Jenn. Whilst we've been trying to get her on the show for the past few years, she has introduced to us, and you the listener, many wonderful young scientists to whom we've interviewed over the past 3 years. And whilst Jenn was also an important contributor to Season 2's wrap-up episode for 2021, Personal Climate Stories, we are absolutely delighted to finally have her on the show as a guest. And of course, Jenn continues to find us other amazing guests, and we're also super privileged to have Jennell on the show. So we're going to take a kapati approach, a concept we were introduced to by Thomas Tothill back on Season 3, Episode 15. So make yourself a cup of tea, get comfortable, and enjoy what we're sure will be a fascinating yarn.
That's right. So today we're lucky to have those two wonderful guests joining us. Jenn, in addition to her work at a Drift Lab, is also working as a Healthy Country Plan Coordinator for the Tjlatjraak Native Title Aboriginal Corporation in Esperance, where Jennell has worked as a Community Engagement Officer for the last 5 years. So we're really looking forward to this yarn today. Ladies, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Woohoo! Thank you for having us.
Jenn, Jennell, so I hope we won't get the listeners confused because we can see you by video, but hopefully we'll make a clear distinction. Jenn, we've got to start with you. A little bit about your backstory, your name, and a Drift Lab that has been mentioned many times over the years through the PhD, Masters, honours students we've had on the show, always paying credit to the amazing work you do. So tell us a little bit about that journey, but also how you've now ended up in Esperance.
Oh, where to begin? I mean, first, I think I feel like I have to respond to your opener and say, like, I'm sorry if I've been so difficult and elusive. That's never my intention. Right. So Drift Lab, like Jennell, a Drift Lab has been around and making great strides for about 5 years. We, for a long time, were based in Tasmania, but in the last 6 or 9 months have made the big leap across the Bass Strait and are now largely Esperance-based. But beyond that, not much has changed. So I think you're still going to be seeing lots of students and amazing projects coming down the pipeline. So if there's any listeners out there thinking about cool projects, they want to do caring for country, they want to work with seabirds, plastics, gosh, everything in between. This is still a safe, inclusive, and wonderful place to do research at the honours, master's, and PhD level.
Amazing. Jennell, for our listeners, where is Esperance?
Okay, so we're right on the south coast of WA. Esperance we call Kepa Kurl. Kepa Kurl is the Nyungar name for Esperance. So Kepa meaning water and Kurl meaning boomerang. So where the waters lie like boomerangs, which our bays, look like boomerangs lying.
And you've been with the Esperance Tjlatjraak Native Title Aboriginal Corporation for over 5 years now. You guys are doing such amazing work. So tell us about your role there and a bit of your fascinating backstory.
That's right. I've been since 2018 on board with Tjlatjraak. Not always in the role as Community Engagement Officer. I started off as a ranger within the corporation, and I still call myself a ranger, though I do get out on country every now and then. But community engagement is really important as well within the organisation, and to be able to share culture and knowledge to the wider community is really important for the corporation.
And I think Jennell's being very humble because what she does here is absolutely incredible. So, for example, we had a drone show
just very recently, which was, I can allow Jennell to talk to it, just a caliber of nothing I had ever personally seen. It was remarkably received by the community. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, so Wudjari Warren is bringing country back to life. So retelling stories of our ancient culture and, bringing the white community along for the journey and building relationships along the way. So we live in quite a rural town, a small town, only 15,000 people. We are, just surrounded by farmland, as mentioned, but we got determination of native title in 2014, and Tjlatjraak was set up in 2016, and we've been going from strength to strength throughout that time.
And Jennell, your sort of connection to Esperance, I presume that's where you were born, you've grown up, or is that somewhere you've moved to? What's your connection to the region?
Yeah, I am a traditional custodian of this place. Tjlatjraak has 6 family groups that represent the native title group here, and I'm a part of the Reynolds family group. We also have the Bullen family group, the Dabs family group, the Yorkshire Naps, Boxer Rogers, and the Tucker family groups that hold native title rights over our country here.
And I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think registered in 2016, you've been doing fantastic work since then. But maybe for anyone that isn't familiar with the concept of a registered native title body corp, this might be an important starting point for the discussion today. So what's the actual purpose and the importance of establishing them?
Yeah, so native title, as mentioned, was determined by the High Court that traditional owners or Wudjari people here that we say has native title rights within...
I'd say it's like a recognition of that continuing connection to culture and country over thousands of years uninterrupted.
It's a place for native title holders to come to be able to uphold their rights. And like Jenn said, to be able to prove that that continuous culture and to have the courts recognise it, the white man's law.
I think we have a really interesting structure here. So as Jennell said, there's the 6 family groups. And so as the ETNTAC organization, we have representative family members from each of the 6 groups. And so they're represented either through elders or through rangers as well. So their nieces and nephews and are part of our ranger team as well. And ETNTAC basically provides a place where everyone can come together and have input into what the priorities are with caring for country, what the aspirations of the elders are for the next generation. Kind of provides like a base, a home, a safe place as well. It's a safe place to come and work, exchange information and knowledge and gain skills. And for me, it's been an incredible place to work.
Yeah, so it's quite a large area of that we're talking about in regards. It's about 30 square kilometres of a country that we say is Wudjari, is our country, and that's we are the most southeastern part of the Nyungar Nation. We have 14 different Nyungar nations, so it's below Geraldton all the way down the coast, right around to us in the most southeastern part of the coast.
So then now, to put the two of you together, Jenn, how did this relationship form? How did you get to become the Healthy Country Plan Coordinator? Why Esperance?
That's a really good and a really easy question, I think, for me to answer. I started coming to Kepa Kurl Esperance, probably 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. Kind of lost track. I think when things are wonderful, they all blend together. And immediately for me, it was just such an incredible opportunity to go out on country and have that blend of Western science and traditional knowledge, and to see things through a new and different lens. And so there was just a real draw, a pull for me to come back more and more and more. And as Esperance Tjaltjraak was getting its legs, and the organization was really getting up off the ground, Sea Country and caring for Sea Country, working out on the islands that we have here off Esperance. It's the research archipelago. It's 105 islands, give or take. There's a lot out there. That the Native Title Organization now has joint management of, and has aspirations to care for. And that's a huge amount of country. That's a huge amount of responsibility. It's a lot of ground to cover. And so me coming across for 1 or 2 weeks at a time to do one small project just seemed woefully inadequate. And folks like Jennell and some of the elders and stuff just made me feel so welcome and at home. It was pretty hard to just not call Esperance home after a while. So here we are.
And we believe that a past guest of the show, Thomas Tottel's actually due to arrive and spend some time with yourselves.
Yeah, so he's coming next week. And he's spending the whole month with us, which is exciting. I mean, we always look forward to having people visit us, but, you know, the ones that keep returning and building that relationship is really important.
I think it's amazing what Tom's project is. I know he probably would have spoken about it, but he came out and worked with the rangers. We went out on ships, dropped BRAVs, or baited remote underwater vessels, under the water to look at what species and diversity were under there. But Tom's been basically sitting on this incredible footage of really cool fish and sharks and rays and kelps and even little corals and sponges and things. And we see teeny little snippets of information and video clips from him. But this is a really amazing opportunity for him to kind of close that loop and come back to country where the data was originally connected and work with the rangers to process that imagery, to create the data, not just to create the original samples, but to come back and create the data. And it's just like that connection. I imagine Tom feels as well, just like drawn back to place over and over again. So I can't wait to see all the footage he's got next month. It's going to be amazing.
And I mean, Wudjari Nyungar country it's a pretty special area of the world, not only for the natural beauty and the biodiversity, but like a really rich cultural heritage. It's dating back thousands of years. So talk to us about the cultural and historical significance, and you know, the work that you're doing to preserve that in the area.
Yeah, it's quite amazing to see it from a younger person's point of view. I mean, I do acknowledge our elders for sharing that sort of stuff with us, taking us our country, and you know, these special places that have been untouched for thousands of years, and to be able to document them and, you know, shed light on how we can care for these areas. So we have a team of senior elders that come out with us as well, and they're critical to how we approach a project, depending on where we are, whether we're on the coast, which we've got quite a long coastline, as well as within the archipelago itself, with all the islands, but inland as well, and looking at projects like the Now project or the Mallee Vale project, to be able to protect areas so mining doesn't come into those areas as well.
We have these incredible moments. I have these incredible moments. I don't know, I'm sure it's hard to explain. So as Jennell said, that's just the incredibly remote, pristine corners of Wudjari country. And we're really, I feel incredibly privileged to get to go. And so one of the places we went recently, it's a place called Salisbury Island. It's extremely remote, very difficult to get to, heck of an island to get up and on top of. Oh my gosh, so much bush bashing and steep cliffs and just lots of mayhem. But it was I think probably the most special moment was these islands used to be connected to the Australian mainland somewhere between 10 and 15,000 years ago. This is the history of this place. And that seems like a really long time, but in reality, it's kind of not. But for a lot of the rangers, for a lot of the younger generation, and the day that I was on Salisbury, we had some pretty young rangers with us, and it was one of the first times we'd been to Salisbury. And one of the elders turned to one of the younger rangers and said, "You do realize that you're one of the first Wudjari to set foot on Salisbury Island in perhaps 13,000 years." And I don't have words to explain that moment. And it was very clear how much it resonated with them. And so that's the power of these projects and the power of this place. And who wouldn't want to be here and be part of that?
So there's a lot of research happening now, documenting now, but how far back, are there records of how far back the Kepa Kurl Wudjari people have been in that piece of land, and how much knowledge would have been gained and recorded over such an extensive period of time? And third part of the question is its importance. How important is that, of how much knowledge has been gained over such a long period of time?
Yeah, that's a huge question. I mean, obviously
you've got the time. Go for it.
So, we do say we have 50,000 years plus of connection to this area, and we are still finding evidence to this day within the town site itself, which is astonishing because there's so much movement, there's so much change within the town itself. But to be able to, have partners to be able to come in, like archaeologists, to be able to determine dates of recolonisation, having those sort of data and information to be able to not so much we need to have the evidence of, but to be able to share with the wider community that we have had that connection for so long.
It's quite mind-blowing to just think of, I've travelled to different parts of the countries, and history always fascinates me, and there might be some excavation somewhere, but it's 2,000 years old, and that's fascinating. Or you go and see some ruins, and that's 4,000 years old. Wow. Okay. How you're talking about 50,000 years. That's just incomprehensible of how long a nation has been around. And that would equate to just the amount of history, the amount of learnings, the amount of I don't know. I'm trying to sort of process that. It's a lot.
It really struck me in regards to the islands itself, like having those conversations about where the actual sea levels were. So, starting off, back at the continental shelf, and then when the ice age happened, the melting of that, and then the water sort of encroached on country, and those cultural pathways or cultural corridors are still there today, but under the ocean. And that connection to the ocean, we do have evidence out there as well. But to be able to work with Sea Country and like Tom's project, to be able to see what's actually left behind as evidence on the seafloor, but then to be able to follow it through all the way onto land, and flowing on to other people's country as well.
So many of the projects that or the people that we work with on projects, our project partners, we try very hard to align those projects with Wudjari cultural corridors, because exactly as Jennell said, those cultural corridors, we know where they are on land right now, and there's so many artifacts and other bits of evidence that point to these places being really significant artworks and things. But where those cultural corridors meet current sea level, they disappear under the water. But that doesn't mean that that's where those corridors ended. In fact, it's completely the opposite of where the story takes us. And so those corridors wind and continue under the water. And in many cases, there's limestone reefs and various things that really kind of hint at probably the route that those corridors were likely to have taken 10, 15,000 years ago. And so Tom's project and another one that we've got underway over the next couple of years called Ancient Coastlines is actually using modern technology like BRAVs, like seafloor mapping, to map those areas identified as priority as cultural corridors by the Wudjari to find out, are we right? Did those cultural corridors continue in the places that we suspect they might? Because Jennell's spot on. Divers and other people have noted that there's evidence of middens, there's caves that could include artifacts under the water in, 50 plus meters of water. And I just find that absolutely fascinating. I mean, everywhere we go on the islands, we find artifacts and evidence of human occupation. So you're absolutely right, Ben, that it's not like the pyramids, I think, which are, broadly in the kind of the 4,000 year age range. We're talking about the islands off the coast of Esperance, something that many of us might take for granted, have evidence of human occupation going back 15,000 years. And it's not just on one or two islands that might have been culturally significant. It's on virtually every single island. These islands were home. They were commonly utilized. And that just blows my mind. When I was gardening in my backyard just 10 days ago, I found an artifact in the backyard, and I immediately knew it was an artifact because Jennell's right. We're so lucky to have anthropologists and archaeologists coming to work with us, and I've learned a little bit, I've assimilated some of that knowledge in the past few months. And so as soon as I picked it up, I knew I was onto something special. But as soon as I sent a photo through to the archaeologist, he said, actually, that's not local stone. So somebody carried that and left it on your property. And just to hold that in my hand, it's just like, and those moments happen every day when I'm here. There's always something being found. So Wudjari country and the whole of Western Australia, likely the whole of Australia, it's like literally everywhere you look, you will find that ancient connection to country, to culture. There is evidence of human occupation going back farther than most of us can fathom. And it's not just in a few little pockets.
And I mean, you've got a lot of research projects on the go at the moment. Fundamentally, science is the pursuit of knowledge. So really the Western approach to science and the scientific method, it can be quite advanced from incorporating Indigenous knowledge systems. There's literally thousands of years worth of knowledge to be drawn on. So how is ETNTAC kind of weaving these two approaches together for best outcomes?
Yeah, technology is definitely something that we look hard at. It helps our work, definitely in regards to dating things, and it's working smarter, not harder. So we are having a project in regards to droning. We don't have to sort of bush bash to an area and disturb an area when we can utilise a drone to be able to go to a site and determine if it's worth pursuing further surveying in that area. So, upskilling our young rangers to be able to use technology in the field of being a ranger and having that being passed on to the younger rangers. It's something that, especially droning, they're quite savvy in regards to technology, the younger guys, and to be able to pick that up and run with it and take pride in what they're doing and coming to work to be able to do that sort of stuff it's really, really good as well.
Two of our rangers are about to, in the next week or two, get their full drone pilot's license, which is a massive achievement, a huge amount of study and training, and it's an enormous qualification. And so they potentially might be the only drone pilots in Esperance. It might be too bold of a statement, but anyway, it's a remarkable achievement, and already their skills are in hot demand, doing heritage surveys and agricultural surveys, and also what we would call healthy country surveys. So working with us. So it's to answer your question of like modern and Western science and blending the two. I'm like constantly blown away by the way ETNTAC does that in such a mindful and purposeful way. So we have a project underway right now in collaboration with RMIT University that is led by quite a number of our rangers. So we have 2 of our rangers who are leading the Malleefowl, or the Wudjari name is Now, aspect, where we are using the Malleefowl national monitoring standards and going out and doing on-ground surveys. That sounds really sexy and cool, but it is literally just an horrendous amount of bush bashing through some of the densest bush. I did it for 6 hours on Tuesday and I was shattered. So we've got this team doing the on-ground bush bashing grid. We've got our 2 rangers about to get their drones pilot license, who are then going to fly that grid, exact same grid that we've just walked, to look at what do we find on the ground versus what does the drone find in the air, and what is some of the kind of cost benefits of that. And I had to laugh because I said to our 2 drone pilots, it's taken us 6 or 7 days to walk the grid in some of the most grueling conditions. How long realistically is it going to take the drone? And he was like, 15 minutes. And I was like, no, that's not fair. But then the really amazing part of it is Uncle Henry and Auntie Donna are actually going to do, I don't really have a name for it at this moment, but a Wudjari survey. So using their connection to country, their knowledge of country, their ability to read country in a way that so many of us cannot, they are going to guide us onto country and go in search. We will go with them and go in search of Malleefowl nests. And you just watch. The ground-based survey will fail to find Malleefowl. The drone-based survey probably won't do all that much better. And you watch, Uncle Henry will take us in a straight line straight to that first Malleefowl nest, and he will blow us all away. So it's using technology, but it's also demonstrating that Australia's first scientists have a whole lot they can contribute.
Now, 15,000 years is a lot. Knowledge is something that you accumulate over time, experiences, stories, events, etc. I might not phrase this correctly, but I'm going to try. Is there a feeling that perhaps there's been a fair bit lost over the last perhaps couple of 100 years? Or, that now technology on the bright side is perhaps helping bridge that gap again and helping reconnect what was accumulated, perhaps lost in a period of time, and now that there's we're in a position now to sort of start that journey of picking up where we left off. Is technology helping that? Is it helping bridge the gap, and what have we lost, or because there's been discontinuity over time?
I would say it definitely has been since colonisation. We have had disconnect with different parts of country, and one of those things, our language, our Wudjari language, was affected. So to be able to bring that back and to be able to educate the younger generation of language, from an organisation point of view, we have started that process in regards to having someone to look at all the documentation of language from the past, and to be able to collate that and have that available to be able to revive language within the corporation, and getting it into schools and putting them into resources to get the language out there. So technology is definitely something that has been utilised in that way.
I think that's a really amazing way to look at it, Ben. Like, I hadn't really kind of postulated on that before. And Jennell's absolutely right. Technology definitely plays a role in kind of restoration and bringing things back. I guess to show the flip side and to be really balanced, maybe that's my scientist's brain is like, showing both sides of the equation. But I guess I see kind of our global technology boom is also potentially detracting from the community in some regards. So, for example, we have phenomenal amounts of development and exploration. And there's kind of like this collision course of the Indigenous community being pulled away and being encouraged to respond to all of that development on their country, often in very pristine, very sensitive country. The rate at which that development is taking place is so rapid and so extensive because technology avails it to be that way. And yet, we're required to respond equally rapidly. And what that's kind of done is drawn the knowledge holders, the elders from the community, away from community itself and out onto country in constantly responding to all these requests for development, more development, more development, and the elders are constantly just being pulled away. And so what I see from a technology perspective is the younger generation desperately wanting that knowledge exchange, that time on country, that time with community, that connection, and to repair what's been lost. But for that, they really just need time, quiet, holistic time on country with elders before elders are gone. And it's really hard to strike that balance. And so in some ways, technology is also being the undoing, the unraveling of culture. And so I think we need to make people more broadly aware of the pressures on Indigenous communities to meet Western society's expectations and timelines, and realize that continues this process of colonization. This continues the loss of language and culture by removing opportunities for knowledge exchange and just for general connection and feeling whole.
Thank you, Jen. That's super important, because so often, many episodes and more recently, we've been having a bit of more of a shift on conversations around degrowth and, overconsumption and so on. And a lot of the conversations around resource, we're a very resource intensive world. And we talk, there's the greenwashing about moving to electric vehicles and all that. And we talk about the impacts of mining. Amongst some of the significant impacts, we always mention impact on local communities. But that's where we stop. We don't say anything more. Oh, and we're also doing this and that. But we don't actually understand the impact of communities. And this is important, because this is actually what you've raised now is at the heart of the problem. Okay, so now, and I think I read something about this very recently, but local, community, country, people, whatever, government wants to call it, there's now committees, we can now refer, but how much of an influence is there? Is it just a process, just a tick in the box and say we've consulted the local community, we've done our job? Or is there actually more impetus to listen and compromise and actually work through solutions?
That's what we found a lot of, people rushing to be able to tick that box and not actually forming relationships with First Nations people. For us as well, we find that they jump the gun in regards to projects, coming to us with projects and not collaborating and not letting First Nations people have, how they collaborate and form a project together. What do we get out of the relationship? Is it something that, is just one-sided? Or do they, inform us that, they want to build a project together and have us share, like that two-way sharing and having,
Jennell touches on such a good point, and that makes me put my science hat back on. So the pressure on Indigenous communities is not just coming from mining and other forms of industry. It's actually also come from scientists. So the scientists out there who are listening, who want to engage with community and are really unsure how to do it. A lot of times I know it's like the best laid plans and their intentions are good, But like mining, like development and exploration, it's put an incredible amount of pressure on community because the way that community has been approached has been kind of insensitive and inappropriate. And so Jennell's absolutely right. What's happened is that the ideas are not being co-developed or co-designed. Researchers are coming to community with ideas that very much fit their deliverables, their timelines, their models. The project is essentially whole and developed. And now they're coming to community at a very late stage saying, this is what I would like to do. Would you just give me a tick box so I can access your land? And oh, by the way, there might be scope for one of your rangers to come along as long as we can get some photos to show collaboration. And we've a couple of things is one, we're getting really good at pushing back on that and saying, I'm sorry, but that's not good enough. And the second thing is because there isn't that co-development, it's obviously disrespectful, but also groups are coming too late with very minimal timeframes where a community that is already under pressure from exploration, we've got all of these competing demands. You now have someone coming to you a matter of weeks before they want to initiate their field work saying, can you read over this 47-page document and get back to me in the next 7 days? And that is totally unrealistic. So for those who are listening, community want to work with you. They want co-development. They want knowledge exchange, all of those things. Like, we have shared values, and there's so much for us both mutually to benefit from these relationships when they're done well. But give it the time, the space, and the nurturing that it needs, and then it will pay dividends.
So long-term collaboration, Indigenous-led, it's all really important key messages. Would you, Jennell, would you mind speaking about the importance of ETNTAC's work and work of other native title body corps as well in the process of truth-telling and to enact healing?
Yeah, obviously before Tjlatjraak was formed, we didn't really have a voice within our own community. So being visible, we actually had a office down the main street, and that's what our elders and our board wanted to be visible physically within the town centre of Tjlatjraak. Unfortunately, we quickly outgrew that premises, and we are in the industrial area, but we still get a lot of traffic past here. But we are making, being visible in other ways, the social media platforms. But yeah, just the importance of, letting people. We had a lot of our members go off country because of health reasons or chasing work. But Tjlatjraak has sort of opened up job opportunities in that regard. So that's really important for have people move back on country. So and to be able to have our legacy, our ancestors' legacy being sort of fulfilled, so to speak, in regards to caring for country within the Ranger program. So that's really important to be able to nurture the younger ones coming through, because it's something that a lot of our elders didn't get to see. So it took 20 odd years to have that determination be handed down, and I think to see it sort of full circle, they'd be proud of what we've achieved in such a small amount of time. But yeah, to be able to be sustainable and grow and improve our people's well-being and health within the community is really important, and to share with the wider community. We've got something to share, and the culture's been here, it's so rich, and we want to be able to share that knowledge and have better relationships within the community. Unfortunately, it's a little bit strained at the moment, but there's a few things happening, and we all live here, and we all want to be prosper in the community, and that's Tjlatjraak's wants to do for for our members.
I think what Jennell's just alluded to is really important. It comes back to your question about truth-telling. So the community is quite sensitive at the moment. There's some pretty major changes happening with state legislation with regards to something called the Cultural Heritage Act, and that's coming into play next week on the 1st of July. And the statement that was very carefully considered, very emotional for Tjlatjraak to put out to the community, was released only just a few days ago. And I was really proud. I think everybody here was really proud to put that statement forward. It was very honest. It was very much about truth-telling. It was about being really real and honest with the community, the broader community, about the challenges that we here face as an organization, but also within the Wudjari community. And I have to say that the message to the broader community was that it was thank you for receiving that so well. It was a truth-telling moment about coming out and saying, this is the realities of how difficult this has been for us and the challenges that we will face moving forward with this new act, the burden that puts on the organization and its individual people. It was very, very emotional. It's a very emotional time. It was nice to know that we could truth tell, we could be honest and real, and the reception of the community was actually pretty exceptional. So well done to the organization, and well done to the broader community. That's the way it should be.
Especially in the last, again, probably a few hundred years, as humans on this planet, we've been immensely destructive. We're been very destructive, continue to be very destructive on country. I'm just about finished a book called Injustice, which looks at the biodiversity loss in Australia, which is, we've spoken a few times on the show, saying it doesn't really have a great track record. Makes me angry when I read things like that. Makes a lot of us angry when we hear of what is actually happening, because a lot of it is out of sight, out of mind. We don't actually realise, or maybe outsiders more like myself don't realise as much, not living in Australia. Just going back to the concept of merging science with Indigenous knowledge systems and so on, because there's a growing acknowledgement that there's so much that's held with Indigenous communities, First Nations peoples. Why are we not going to them and drawing on their experience? They know how to live on the land. They know how to draw resources in and I'll use this word now, sustainable manner, because we use the word sustainable incorrectly so often. We've spoken about technology, use of technology, the pros and cons, but science in general. Jenn, the research that's done through a drift lab. You might do some research on Lord Howe Island, which is on the complete opposite end of Australia. But how does science like that help modern local communities in terms of actually understanding what the issues are and how to address them? And maybe not just local Indigenous communities in general. I think the concept of the paired approach, how important is that?
I think it's, at least for me, it's the communities that help me understand. So an example, Lord Howe Island doesn't have Indigenous people as we would know them. It was colonized relatively recently, but the community that lives there now identifies as fifth, sixth, and possibly there might even be a seventh generation of Lord Howe Islander with continuous occupation. And they would defend that to the ends of the earth, that they have incredibly strong connection to that place and have fought really hard to protect it as the pristine, intact environment that Lord Howe Island is. I mean, it's absolutely stunning, and it's a showcase for Australia. And so in many ways, I try and acknowledge and respect and incorporate that knowledge into the papers that we write. So it's the community there, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, that we look to inform the changes that have taken place. And when I speak with community there and they say to me, the bird populations have undoubtedly declined, regardless of what your data says. Your data set starts in the late 1970s. My grandfather and my great-grandfather go back, far beyond that. And here's what I know to be true. Then it is really beholden on us as scientists to not treat that as some arbitrary bit of information, but to seek out other complementary and supporting bits of information and to build the story on that so that the baseline shifts back further. And so it's the same here with working with Indigenous communities, is looking to incorporate that knowledge in a respectful and comprehensive way so that it enhances our understanding of the species and how to best conserve it.
And can I just jump on with that? Like, it's important not to just take a broad stroke approach, because as you mentioned, a lot of the knowledge is place-based. And in Australia, you know, we've got hundreds of different and distinct First Nation groups. So to honour that local knowledge and practice, I think, is so important.
It blows my mind how far we still have to go, and like the fundamentalness of some of the change that's needed. So, for example, we've been working collaboratively, myself and the community here, for about a year or so now, making slow but steady progress on renaming the species that exists here. So we've called it in previous podcasts, and probably will for a little while longer, the flesh-footed shearwater. But that is a wholly inappropriate name for the species for a number of reasons. One, it implies that flesh only has one color, which is pink or pale. And that's obviously totally incorrect and offensive. But there's also a number of seabird species that all look very similar, including the titi, or the sooty shearwater in New Zealand, which are all dark with mostly kind of pinky colored feet. And so calling something a flesh-footed shearwater is not at all descriptive or helpful with regards to identification. And so we've been working with the elders here with the Wudjari community and starting some conversations in New Zealand and elsewhere with regards to what is a more appropriate name for this species. And so before I can even begin to talk about, you know, is the species in decline? And if so, what are its pressures? I don't even know what to call it. So yeah, we have a long way to go sometimes.
Well, look, we're happy to rename some of our past podcasts, but you might also have to have a word with David Attenborough, because the last, the second season of The Planet on Netflix, I think, makes reference to that. So, yeah, you have a few conversations to have. We like to talk about taking action. We like to inspire our audience, and that's what part of these conversations are all about. We learn, but now what can I do with that information? What can we, as a general community, learn from our First Nations people? What can we learn to implement for ourselves, for our own communities, for our general nation community? Because we know we're in a climate crisis. We know we're in all sorts of trouble. We need to, and this has become more of a common theme, is we need to, as a community, make change. What can we learn from 15,000 years worth of knowledge? It's who our teachers should be, really. It's where we should be learning from. But what are some key, really important things we can learn from and use to put into practice?
What a question. Oh, boy.
It's a loaded question.
Oh, such a good one. Tough one, though, to answer.
I would first say treading lightly on country. Just what you take out, bring back. Don't use multiple tracks. You know, there's so much pressure on country, especially in the tourist seasons when people flock by the thousands especially to our country, and not knowing the impacts it has when they leave. That's one from me. I don't know if that's.
Is tourism a bad thing then? Western society governs a lot of things now. You know, we have school terms, we have school holidays, and we know that there's peak seasons with tourism, and there's a massive influx and a massive pressures on infrastructure and resources and so on. If I want to take action, I want to go on holiday or see a beautiful part of the world, is going out of season taking a form of action because I'm not over... You know, it sounds ridiculous as a ridiculous example, but you make a valid point. An influx of people puts a massive load on resources.
Do we love country to death? Yeah, we do, including in tiny little Esperance. I mean, Jennell can speak. Her baseline goes back further than mine, but even just in the less than 10 years I've been coming here, when I first started coming to Esperance and I was going back to Tassie and selling it to friends and family and talking about how amazing this place was, I was like, it's so quiet. The beaches are, just nobody there. You can drive for miles, all this kind of stuff. And it's a different place now in less than 10 years. It's still amazing, but oh boy, has it changed so rapidly, because we are in some ways loving country to death. And I think that links back to your original question, which is like, what can we learn from 50,000 years of caring for country in a different way? And that is that, like, country is us. We are country. That's what Wudjari and almost all Aboriginal culture would say, is that we are not apart from country. It's what defines you. It's your place. I don't have the beautiful saying that like Uncle Doc would have. He would just say something so poignant in this moment. But I think it's because for some of us, we have not allowed country to remain part of us. It's something separate. It's over there. It's maybe dangerous, or it's far away. We live in our urban settings. That we do start to overlove country, or we just start to not care about country. And so it's that reconnection to place. It's that reconnection to the fact that we are not separate from country. And if we allow it to deteriorate to the point of nothingness, that has real and meaningful implications for us.
That cultural lens, when I go out on country, I see differently from someone else that would go out there. I see, there's a supermarket, there's a hardware shop, there's, the local fishing, shop. And I feel like that's something that just looking differently at country, or even, what can it tell you by just looking at it. So I feel like that's when you belong to something, you take care of it, and you care for it.
So moving more towards like a reciprocal relationship rather than the extractive relationship we have at the moment.
And don't forget that wherever you live, that was once someone else's country. I was driving back from a field survey one day in January when I first got here, and Uncle Doc, in his magical way of putting people in their place, just very casually said to me as I was a passenger, as we drove past this place called Bandy Creek, that's where I grew up, and that used to be my bush, and as a little boy I would just run around barefooted in that bush. And I just kind of completely had the breath taken out of me, because I looked to my left and it's just end to end suburban houses there's no bush there. And so, wherever you go, allow your feet to fall softly, and remember that place wasn't always yours.
Yeah, hugely important. I think it's respect as much as it is. I think being respectful of the past and how our behavior impacts the future. And I think that's, what can drive us in terms of what decisions, the decisions we make. I think this conversation has been hugely enlightening. It's really made us pause and think. And it's a kind of conversation we've been wanting to have for a long time, but we wanted to have the right guests to guide us through this. Jennell, what you've shared with us is humbling for us, because in our very short respective times on this planet, we don't appreciate how much has been experienced before us. And there's a lot for us to learn. We know nothing. This is what we always say. We know nothing. We're here to learn. So thank you so much for sharing the amazing work that your community, the Kepa Kurl Wudjari people, as part of the amazing work that you do, the leadership that you're showing. I know you have a lot of challenging work ahead of you, but there's a lot of bravery and there's a lot of amazing leadership. And to have someone like Jenn on board is just, what a power team. Jenn, it's been a real pleasure to finally have you on the show. With you, we can either talk science or we can go a little deeper, and you can really share a lot of wisdom that's in your head. And I think that's why so many of your students revere you and really appreciate the guidance that you give them. So between the two of you, wonderful ladies, thank you so much for coming onto this episode and sharing amazing wisdom and guidance. So thank you so much for the yarn.
I would say anytime, but you know that I'll make you chase me for the next booking.
Hey, it was worth it, right?
I hope so. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Lentil Intervention Podcast. If you found this interesting, make sure you subscribe and share it with your friends.